this week's episode of Mad Science. As you can see, my two sidekicks that are normally with me, they ditched me this week. So it's just me and Dixie. But this week I'm super pumped. We are going to do an experiment that's actually going to take a little bit of time, and we have to do a teeny bit of cooking. But we are going to make our very own rock candy, also known as crystal candy. So I'm super excited. What you need for this experiment is some sugar. You'll need 2 cups of sugar. You'll need some water. You will need a jar. You could use a jar, a cup, anything you want, a jar. And you'll need some string. And you'll need a paper clip, or you could use like a bead or something like that. And a pencil. So, if you want to do this along with me, gather up your materials and meet me right back here. Part of this activity, we are going to go ahead and set up our jar. So you'll take your jar, your glass cup or container, whatever you're using. I'm just using the small mason jar. I think this one is like an 8 ounce maybe. Yeah, 8 ounce jar. And you're going to take your piece of string. I'm just using some string from a dollar store kite. Nothing fancy. And you're just going to cut a piece of string. You don't have to worry about the exact measurement of it right now. We'll figure all that out in just a moment. So on one end of the string, I'm going to tie my paper clip. The paper clip is going to act kind of like a weight, but it will also be a little bit of a magnet for our crystal solution. So we're going to tie that paper clip on there and probably put it in a knot, just to be on the safe side. Make sure it doesn't come off. All right, whoop, if I can grab it, goodness gracious. Okay, so I've got my paper clip on one end of my string, just like so, it's just dangling there. And then I'm gonna tie the other end of my string to a pencil. So I want this, ultimately, it's going to be in my jar like this. It's gonna be close to the bottom, but not quite touching the bottom of the jar. So that kind of tells you about how much string you're gonna need for the pencil. The pencil is gonna sit on top of your jar like this to hold your string in place. So if that tells you about how much you need, you just kind of guess. Worst case scenario, if it's too long, we have a solution, so don't worry. I'm gonna tie mine too long on purpose so I can show you how to fix it if you need to. So we're just gonna tie the other end of the string to the pencil. And I'm gonna tie this one in a knot as well because I want it to be nice and secure. Try to make it nice and tight as best I can. It's a good practice in tying, isn't it? Okay, so if I set my string in here like this, you can see there's a lot of loose string and the paper clip is just laying on the bottom. So that means my string is a little bit too long. Now before I get it set, I'm going to cut off all this extra on the other side of the paper clip. So I'm going to cut it just a hair there. Okay, so now I just have kind of a tiny little tail on the other side of the paper clip and then the long side. So I'm going to set that in there. And now if my string is too long, I can just kind of roll my pencil until my string is the right length. And once you get your string at the right length, you'll know because it will be hanging in the cup, almost touching the bottom, but not quite on the bottom. So you'll be able to kind of see it dangle. So you see how you can kind of see mine dangle? It's really, really close to the bottom, but not quite touching it. So that's kind of where we're gonna want the string to be. So now that we've got that set up, we can get to making the solution that we're gonna put inside of the cup. So we're gonna go into the kitchen for that. All right, now we are in the kitchen. So all we need for this part is a pot or kind of like a low pan. You don't need a big pan. This one is a 2 quart. You could even use something smaller. You'll need 1 cup of water. So I've got it measured out, 1 cup of water. And you're gonna need a total of 2 cups of sugar, but we're gonna use it in 1/4 cup increments. So that means we're gonna break our 2 cups into 8 equal-ish parts. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and pour the 1 cup of water into the pot. And then we're gonna turn on the heat. So we definitely need adults for this. And we're gonna let this water heat up. So what we're looking for is for this water to get nice and hot. And while it's doing that, we're gonna start adding in our sugar. So you might have noticed that I said we are using 1 cup of water and 2 cups of sugar. So that means we're using 2 times as much sugar as water. So that will be important later. So we've got our 1 cup of water. It's gonna start heating up. I'm gonna go ahead and measure out a whole cup of sugar. And I'm just gonna start to add in a little less than half of this. So about 1/4 of this 1 cup of sugar. I'm just gonna start to put some in, and I wanna stir it up because I want it to dissolve. So I'm gonna put in a little bit at a time, and I'm gonna stir, stir, stir until that sugar dissolves into the water. Now, if the water is warm, the sugar will dissolve easier. When the water is not warm, it's a little harder to get the sugar to dissolve. So you'll just stir, stir, stir. And we're gonna keep doing this. You're gonna let the water get hotter. You're gonna keep stirring in little bits of sugar at a time until you have stirred in all 2 cups of sugar. And you'll know that it'll get a little bit harder to get that sugar to dissolve the more sugar is in there, because there's not very much water for it to dissolve into. You can also add a little bit of food coloring into your sugar water mixture if you would like your rock candy to be a different color other than white. So if you want blue, you could put a few drops of blue food coloring in here. This would be the time to do that when it's nice and warm and it can dissolve right in there and mix in really easily. So go ahead and add a color if you'd like, and just keep working on getting that sugar dissolved into the warm water. So now that this first batch of sugar is dissolved, you can see it's gone back to basically clear water. You wouldn't even know I had sugar in there. Now I can add a little bit more. So I've got about half my cup of sugar left that I haven't mixed in yet. So I'm gonna let this dissolve into the hot water. My water's getting hotter, so my sugar is dissolving a little faster. And I'm gonna keep doing this until I have poured in a total of 2 cups of sugar into this water and gotten it dissolved. my sugar is dissolved into the water. I'm turning off the heat. You can see my water, it kind of, you might be able to feel this if you're stirring it at home. It feels kind of thicker, which is kind of weird, and it almost looks a little cloudy, not quite as clear as our water normally is, right? But our sugar is dissolved into that water. So now we are definitely going to need a grown-up's help to do the next step, which is pouring it. I'm going to move this so it doesn't burn the sugar. So the next step, you're going to need your jar and your string that you made again. So now you're going to just take your string out and we're going to set it to the side. Let me get this a little closer for you guys. Actually, let's move it over this way. So I'm going to take my string out and set it to the side. Try to kind of hold it where it was. And you're going to take your jar and you will have your adult helper to fill up your jar almost to the top with that super sugary water. Oh my goodness. All right. Now once you've got your super sugary water in your jar, you will take your pencil with your string and your paper clip and you're going to lower that into your jar. And you might need to adjust your string a little bit. If you do, that is totally okay. So once you have your string in your jar, this is what it should look like. Let me adjust a little bit here so I can show you a little better. Boop, boop. So this is what you'll be looking at. So I can see my string, my paper clip in my jar. It's holding up here. Now, if you want to, you can put a coffee filter or something over the top of this just so you make sure nothing falls into it, like you don't get any dust or anything like that. But this is going to sit for as many days as you want to, as many days as you can handle. The longer it sits, the better. So if you can let it sit for 2 weeks even, it will be really, really cool. But you're gonna let it sit and you will notice something will start happening to that string. So I'm gonna go back to the table and we will talk about what we expect to see. All right, guys, I hope you are super excited to see your crystal candy come to life in your jar. I am so pumped. So I want to tell you a little bit about what's going on. How are we making candy in these jars? So when we made our solution, we put in 1 cup of water and 2 cups of sugar. So that means we put in twice as much sugar as we did water, which means that is a super saturated solution. It means the solution has a lot of stuff in it. So what happens is we had to heat that water up. That's why we had to use the stove and a pot. We had to make that water warm in order to get the sugar to dissolve. If we had tried to do it with cold water, the sugar would not have dissolved in there. It had to be warm. So that makes us think about, well, what happens when the water's not warm anymore? Will the water be able to hold all that sugar? It won't. So when we put a string inside of our jar with that super saturated solution, we are allowing the sugar that comes out of the water to have somewhere to go. So when the water cools down, all the sugar that was dissolved in there that really couldn't fit, it only fit because we warmed up the water, that sugar will now go to that string and cling to it. And so once it sits there for a few days, we will see more sugar clinging to the string, and it'll build up and it'll look like crystals or little rocks. So that's how we make rock candy or crystal candy. It looks really cool. So the longer you let it sit there, the more it will build up. I'm gonna let mine sit for probably a week, maybe a week and a half or so, and check it out. On Seesaw, I put up some slides where you can draw in what it looks like on different days, because I think that's kind of cool to watch it grow and see how big it gets. And you can also do that just on regular paper if you want to just take pictures, or if you want to draw and just put in a picture each day. That's really awesome too. So I'm super excited for you guys. Once you're done letting it grow, you can eat it. It won't hurt you, just a little bit of sugar. So you might not want to do it, right before bedtime. But it'll be really cool, and it'll be a science experiment that you made, and you can eat it. That's awesome. All right, guys, I hope you have fun, and I will see you next time on Mad Science.